North Wales. Most places turning pretty soggy by the end of Wednesday, and it will be blustery. But it will also be mild. Temperatures 10 to 15 maybe across the southeast, a little colder in the far north of Scotland. Now, in the far north, the winds may well stay light, but elsewhere, blustery conditions. And we have warnings in place. An amber warning covering southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Gusts of 60, 70 miles an hour. A yellow warning extending further south into Wales, the Midlands and East Anglia. Travel disruption, likelihood of damage to trees. Power interruptions also possible, particularly in that amber area. So a blustery Wednesday evening as that storm system moves through, the winds steadily easing through the night, so that by Thursday, Dudley's out the way. It'll still be a blustery day with sunshine and showers. But here comes the next storm. This is Storm Eunice arriving on Friday. Still some uncertainty about the track and location, but some strong wind from that storm more likely across the southern half of the UK.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. No spin, no bias and no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton tonight. As the Canadian government deploys totalitarian tactics to crush the Freedom Convoy's brave resistance to vaccine mandates, is the globe finally wising up to leaders like Justin Trudeau and Jacinda Ardern's COVID tyranny? I'll explain in my digest why we must all evoke the Canadian trucker's spirit and reject the politics of fear by standing up against these tin pot dictatorships. Then my superstar panel will give their view tonight. The former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Plus, as the Canadian convoy vows to continue their valiant Ottawa occupation despite Trudeau's threats, top columnist Douglas Murray celebrates the woke darlings of the Western world finally getting their comeuppance. He's uncancelled at 9:45. Also, breaking tonight as Prince Andrew reaches a shock settlement with his accuser Virginia Giuffre. Was the disgraced Duke right to settle after previously claiming he would fight to clear his name? Royal author and socialite Lady Colin Campbell thinks he has done the right thing and has nothing to prove, but human rights campaigner Peter Tatchell says buying off the case is wrong and will only damage his reputation more. They'll do battle in the clash at 9:20. Elsewhere on the show, as Vladimir Putin tonight claims conflict can be avoided with a guarantee that Ukraine will never join NATO, should we heed his threat to prevent plunging the world into war? Nigel Farage thinks defying him would be a fatal error. He'll join me live at 9:30. Should more hospitality venues stand up for freedom of choice? Celebrity chef Anthony Worrell Thompson was branded anti-vax after opening his pub to the unjabbed. He'll join me live in the studio at 10:20 to discuss why he has no regrets about joining the front line of the battle for COVID equality. As Tory party chairman Oliver Dowden condemns the woke ideology infiltrating our schools, and teachers are told to drop Mr. and Mrs. to eradicate gender in the classroom. A social justice warrior is threatening our children's future. Well, Darren Grimes gives his uncompromising view in The Outsider at 10:20. As the devolved dictators Drakeford and Sturgeon lash out, do you support the PM's plan to axe free COVID tests for healthy people as we learn to live with the virus? Plus, Novak Djokovic continues to serve as a poster boy for freedom and bodily autonomy.
Principles of decision-making on my body are more important than any title.
Is he right to give up his chance to become the most successful male tennis star of all time by continuing to refuse the COVID vaccine? And are you offended by this joke?
Boris still hanging on in there. And this week, he flew off to Ukraine. Or if you're watching on Catch-Up TV, he flew off to southwest Russia.
Well, you won't be surprised to know woke warriors now want Graham Norton cancelled because of it. But will the BBC stick by him? So we'll answer those questions. Plus, we'll give you a first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. That's in the media buzz throughout the show. Plus, brand new Greatest Britain and Union Jackass revealed just before the end of the show. So do stay up with us. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. Sometimes in life it's obvious that God is looking out for you, and he certainly was with this motorcyclist in the Indian town of Al Chowda, who was literally just inches from death when the speeding Radhani Express charged through a level crossing. Take another look at the miraculous moment. He escapes, but his motorbike was smashed into thousands of pieces. I would like to believe this hour that the good people of Ukraine might have a similarly miraculous escape from war with Russia. But is Putin's partial withdrawal of troops just a big ruse? Well, the world is watching and waiting for the Russian tyrant to move with bated breath tonight. And speaking of tyrants, a special digest on the division and hatred being spread by Canada's COVID dictator Justin Trudeau. That's in just a moment. Then my superstar panel will be unleashed. Tonight, the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. It's a busy show, lots of breaking news, and to keep you updated all night, Polly Middlehurst is here with the headlines.
Dan, thank you. The top stories tonight. Royal experts say Prince Andrew is unlikely to return to royal life after settling a civil sex abuse case against him in the United States. The Duke of York agreed today to donate a substantial sum of money to Virginia Giuffre's charity. Prince Andrew will also demonstrate his regret for his association with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Lawyer Lisa Bloom, who represents 8 victims of Jeffrey Epstein, welcomed the settlement as a victory for Miss Giuffre.
She was able to accomplish what nobody else has. That is to get Prince Andrew to stand squarely with victims of sex trafficking and sexual abuse, to make a significant contribution to her charity, which will help other victims in cases that don't get media coverage, where celebrities aren't involved, but where many women are still suffering.
Lisa Bloom. US President Joe Biden says an imminent Russian attack on Ukraine is still a possibility. It comes after the Russian President Vladimir Putin failed to send a representative to European peace talks. Moscow insists it is pulling back some troops from the Ukrainian border, but NATO says there's no evidence that's happening at all. President Biden is urging Russia to negotiate now with the West.
The United States has put on the table concrete ideas to establish a security environment in Europe. We're proposing new arms control measures, new transparency measures, new strategic stability measures. These measures would apply to all parties, NATO and Russia alike.
President Biden. All children between 5 and 11 years old are going to be offered the COVID jab in Wales. The Welsh Government says it's taken the decision after reading the yet-to-be-published report from the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation. The JCVI, as it's known, has already given the go-ahead to vaccinating at-risk 5 to 11-year-olds. And research by the UK Health Security Agency shows people who are vaccinated are less likely to be affected by long COVID. It found 2 doses of Pfizer, AstraZeneca or Moderna or the single-shot Johnson & Johnson jab cut the risk of developing lasting symptoms by around half. The husband of a woman killed on a film set has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the actor Alec Baldwin. Cinematographer Helena Hutchins died last October after a prop gun Alec Baldwin was holding went off during a rehearsal in a movie. Alec Baldwin claims he did not pull the trigger. Helena's family lawyer is Brian Punish.
A young boy who will never have a mother, and it's a man who lost his wife, who he had a long-term great marriage with. So we need to have them be fully compensated.
Punish speaking there. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you with GB News. Now it's back to Dan Wootton and Tonight.
Critics often ask me, oh, what are you fighting for? Don't worry, everything will be okay soon. Well, to that, I only have to point to the COVID tyranny spreading across the world to prove why the fight we've had these past 2 years to maintain our civil liberties and freedoms here in England has been so important. And I will keep up that battle on behalf of the Welsh and the Scots, who remain controlled by Mad Dog Drakeford and scheming Sturgeon. But as of this day, ground zero of the fight is in Canada, where Justin Trudeau's mask has slipped as he launches a tin-pot COVID dictatorship in a bid to stamp out any resistance to his draconian policies.
We're entering the 3rd week of illegal blockades that have been disrupting the lives of too many Canadians. The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations. We'll always defend the rights of Canadians to peaceful assembly and to freedom of expression, but these blockades are illegal, and if you're still participating, the time to go home is now.
By invoking emergency powers, Trudeau is treating the Freedom Convoy as if they are terrorists or an opponent in war, rather than honest Canadians exercising their God-given democratic right to fight for bodily autonomy and fighting against discriminatory and divisive vaccine mandates that are not anchored in science. The Freedom Convoy has won hearts across the globe and sparked similar demonstrations in countries from France to Israel to New Zealand because of their joyful and positive message, despite its members being unfairly shut out of society. We see through Trudeau's desperate attempts to brand these Canadians as some sort of far-right extremists, because they're nothing of the sort. And tonight, I remind you, it is Mr. Be Kind himself, Trudeau, who has been advancing the cause of segregation through hatred, through lies, and through downright nasty rhetoric. Do you remember how he sparked the formation of the Freedom Convoy in the first place after he made sweeping statements in an incendiary TV interview smearing those who have turned down a COVID vaccine as racist and sexist?
Yes, we will get out of this pandemic by vaccination. We all know people who are a little bit hesitant. We will continue to try to convince them. But there are also people who are fiercely against vaccination. They are extremists who don't believe in science. They're often misogynists, also often racists. It's a small group that muscles in. And we have to make a choice in terms of leaders, in terms of the country. Do we tolerate these people?
Not only are those comments untrue, they're also particularly ironic. Coming from there he is, Mr. Blackface himself, who saw absolutely no issue turning up to parties with black paint smeared over his smug mug time and again. Trudeau had previously excused anger from vaccinated citizens against those who had made a different choice.
People see that we're in lockdowns or serious public health restrictions right now because the risk posed to all of us by unvaccinated people get angry.
It was Trudeau who pathetically fled Ottawa and claimed he had COVID to avoid any sort of dialogue with the Freedom Convoy. When the slime ball eventually re-entered public life, it was to spread further lies about the protesters.
People of Ottawa don't deserve to be harassed in their own neighborhoods. They don't deserve to be confronted with the inherent violence of a swastika flying on a street corner, or a Confederate flag, or the insults and jeers just because they're wearing a mask. That's not who Canadians are.
Okay, but it appears that in Trudeau's world, Canadians will use authoritarian measures to shut down the most important popular resistance of our time, including unprecedented state interventions to starve them of finances by, wait for it, freezing the personal and corporate bank accounts of protesters. But the world is now wise to Trudeau's game and other leaders who have used COVID to enforce extreme state control on their people, like New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern, like France's Emmanuel Macron, who are facing pushback like never before. Remember, these are the folk with whom the Labour leader Keir Starmer aligns. But we will never again let them lock us in our homes, destroy our businesses, cause us to miss our loved one's funeral, and force us to vaccinate our healthy children with a jab that could cause them harm. And we will never again let them segregate society, casting out millions of nurses, teachers, truckers, midwives, and even doctors who have made a different decision about a medical procedure. COVID has caused the moral collapse of the left wing internationally, which has proven itself to be hateful and intolerant. We reject the policies of fear, and we support the brave Canadian truckers whose honks have been heard all around the world. To respond now, my superstar panel, former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator, Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist, Rebecca Reid. Calvin Robinson, this is insane, what's going on in Canada. And the left wing all around the world and mainstream politicians all around the world are sitting back and letting Trudeau do this, but ordinary citizens aren't.
Absolutely. That's what's most shocking to me, Dan, that there is no international community condemning these actions. This is tyranny in action right here, and everyone's just sitting by and letting it happen. If this was Russia, if this was China, you can be damn sure the West would be speaking up. So it's disgusting that they're not. It's cowardice. And, you know, Trudeau started off by saying that these protests were a small, fringe minority, and now he's enacting emergency war powers to tackle them. So what does that tell you about it? But the language he used, we have to make a choice. Do we tolerate these people? Do we tolerate these people for having a different decision, to making a different decision to you? That is terrifying.
Well, segregation. And there's no excuse for segregation for law-abiding citizens ever. And Dawn Neeson, the reason that I think we really have to talk about this is, mark my words, if Keir Starmer were Prime Minister of the UK, this country would be in exactly the same position, because these are the policies that he wanted to implement.
It's quite interesting. It's the left always sort of like, you know, we're the cuddly, be kind, take care of one another, Liberal Party. And the emergency powers that have been invoked in Canada are putting the country on a war footing with their own truckers. And people who are erecting bouncy castles they are literally erecting bouncy castles. It is just insane what's going on there. And then the freezing the bank account thing. So, like, Mrs. Miggins on the street corner can donate $30. They can freeze her account with no court order or anything. That's just the emergency power. And that emergency power is there now, and how long it's going to stay. And the fact that it could happen in this country, given the madness of what's going on in some countries, you can actually see that that might even be the case.
By the way, for Omicron, which is a little pussycat of a cold, and which is our path out of this thing, Rebecca Reid, are we being unfair on Justin Trudeau?
I think we are being unrealistic in the conversation that we're having.
I think it is very scary and very wrong that you can freeze someone's bank account, and I don't agree with that. And I fundamentally agree, my body, my choice when it comes to vaccines. However, those things can be true without these having to be all really good, nice people. They still deserve to not have their bank accounts frozen, even though some of them are quite dicey, and there have been Confederate flags and Nazi flags. Even still, it's perfectly fair to say they shouldn't be treated this way. What I don't like is the way this conversation is being shaped, that they're all good and they're all heroes, or they're all evil and they're all bad. Realistically, they are a mixed group of people, some of whom are behaving quite badly and some of whom aren't.
Well, what's interesting to me, Rebecca, on that is that it is a tiny proportion of the protesters that are connected to those extreme positions.
It depends who you read.
Well, look, I've been watching the feeds myself from all over the world. And it's very interesting because when Trudeau was supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, he wasn't judging them based on the small number of Black Lives Matter protests that were burning down American cities.
I think that's an unfair comparison directly.
Why?
I think a better comparison is that, you know, when we sat here and we talked about Insulate Britain,
yes,
and you called them eco-terrorists and you said throw them in prison, and if they had frozen their bank accounts, would you be saying that was wrong, they deserve better?
Well, I never called on their bank accounts to be frozen.
But we have to be consistent, right? Either you protest...
Of course we have to be consistent.
Either all of these people are entitled to their right to protest in a really selfish way, or
Rebecca,
none of them are.
Throughout the entire Insulate Britain incident, I consistently and constantly said that I believe in the right for Insulate Britain to protest
You said they
legally.
shouldn't be allowed to do
and
any
I
of the
gave
things
them a
they were
platform on
doing.
this show all the time. No, they were sitting in the middle of roads.
Let's be... All I'm asking
with moving traffic.
All I'm asking for from any of us is to be consistent. Either it's OK to block roads, which these people are doing and Insulate Britain were doing, or it's not OK for anybody to do it. But let's pick what's OK and stick to it. Let's not say, well, if my side do it, it's fine, but if your side do it, it's not. I hate it when the left does it, I hate it when the right does it.
I think it's a complete false comparison.
She has a point, but it's the narrative that's being shaped by Trudeau, isn't it?
Yes.
Saying that these people are racist and they're sexist, painting them as someone that can be othered and asking the question of whether we tolerate them or not. That is literally
And I don't
dividing
know
on
where the
purpose.
sexism thing comes from. How do you even make that link? And also a lot of the people who feel really strongly about it are women are a very...
law, but this has been done before when you try to other people to part of society that you don't want to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, let's not... I just feel like when we cannot use a Holocaust comparison, let's not.
We have to draw parallels where we see them, because history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And this is a case of, you know, someone's trying to discriminate against a group of people that are fighting for their freedom by painting them as non-human.
I think if he wants to say...
segregation of racial groups in the US and South Africa.
If he wants to say that you are more likely to be sexist and racist if you don't believe in vaccines, he needs to be able to back that up with some data. If there is data, I'm perfectly willing to entertain it. But if there isn't, then you shouldn't say it.
Yeah.
Rebecca Reed, Calvin Robinson, Dawn Neeson, my superstar panel, and they are here all night. But coming up, Vladimir Putin has tonight claimed conflict in Ukraine can be avoided, but with one big catch. So Nigel Farage is going to give his verdict on Russia's 11th hour deal and whether it's worth taking to preserve peace in Europe. That's shortly. But next, after today's royal bombshell that must have had the Queen breathing a sigh of relief, I'll be asking, should Prince Andrew have settled with his accuser Virginia Giuffre? Royal author and broadcaster Lady Colin Campbell battles it out with staunch Republican and human rights activist Peter Tatchell in The Clash next. But as ever, your thoughts most important to me. Dan at gbnews.uk. I know you have very mixed views on this. Or you can tweet me at GBNews. We've got a poll running there right now too. I'll bring you your all-important verdict after the break.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Stormy conditions on the way through the rest of this week. We have an amber weather warning in place through Wednesday across parts of northern Britain because of Storm Dudley. Ahead of that, this evening, another area of low pressure will bring wet and increasingly windy conditions. But here comes Storm Dudley behind that through Wednesday afternoon and evening across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northern England. That's where the strongest winds are likely to be. But back to Tuesday evening, wet weather spreading across most areas, some snowfall over the hills across Scotland, staying pretty cold here as well. But elsewhere, temperature dropping this evening well down into single figures, but numbers by dawn, look at that, 9 in Hull, 11 in Cardiff, double digits across the south to start Wednesday. So it's Not a cold start, and for much of the Midlands, eastern England, we'll see sunny spells through the morning, but it's going to be windy and it turns very wet very quickly across Northern Ireland. Heavy rain moves into southern Scotland and northern England to parts of North Wales. Most places turning pretty soggy by the end of Wednesday, and it will be blustery. But it will also be mild. Temperatures 10 to 15 maybe across the southeast, a little colder in the far north of Scotland. Now, in the far north, the winds may well stay light, but elsewhere, blustery conditions. And we have warnings in place. Amber warning covering southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Gusts of 60, 70 miles an hour. A yellow warning extending further south into Wales, the Midlands and East Anglia. Travel disruption, likelihood of damage to trees. Power interruptions also possible, particularly in that amber area. So a blustery Wednesday evening as that storm system moves through, the winds steadily easing through the night, so that by Thursday, Dudley's out the way. It'll still be a blustery day with sunshine and showers. But here comes the next storm. This is Storm Eunice arriving on Friday. Still some uncertainty about the track and location, but some strong wind from that storm more likely across the southern half of the UK.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
and I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Nigel Farage and Douglas Murray still to come, but first, time for the clash. And breaking tonight, Prince Andrew has dramatically settled his bombshell sexual abuse lawsuit with Virginia Giuffre. In a letter to US Judge Lewis A. Kaplan, both parties said Prince Andrew intends to make a substantial donation to Ms. Giuffre's charity in support of victims' rights. Prince Andrew has never intended to malign Ms. Giuffre's character, and he accepts that she has suffered both as an established victim of abuse and as a result of unfair public attacks. It is known that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked countless young girls over many years. Now, we know that Andrew's feelings are completely disingenuous, given he told the BBC's Emily Malis he had no regrets about being BFFs with the infamous pedo and sex trafficker Epstein. But today's settlement, as devastating as it still may be, will at least save Her Majesty from months of revelations about Andrew's sordid sex life, which risked overshadowing her Platinum Jubilee year. As I say in a New Mail Online column tonight, he may have bought his way out of the humiliation of being questioned about his connections to the sleazeball Epstein and worse, but Prince Andrew will still die a disgraced royal outcast. In signing that cheque, Andrew has also written his public resignation letter. There is no way back now. And while in my opinion, Prince Andrew should have cooperated with the FBI and fulfilled his pitbull lawyer's recent pledge to face down his longtime accuser in a jury trial, was Prince Andrew's decision today the right one to make? given the situation he's in. What do you think? Dan at gbnews.uk. My email address, tweet me at gbnews. And while you're there, vote in our poll. I'll bring you the results shortly. But to debate this now, I'm joined by human rights campaigner Peter Tatchell and royal author, socialite and broadcaster Lady Colin Campbell. Lady C, look, we have disagreed over Prince Andrew before, and I know you disagree with me tonight, but hear me out. If Prince Andrew had nothing to hide, why did he not go and cooperate with the FBI as he told Emily Maitlis he would? Why did he not go and fight Virginia Giuffre in court as his lawyers promised he would? Because I'm not saying that Virginia Giuffre is telling the truth. Maybe she is, maybe she's not. But Prince Andrew ran away from this today.
Well, I'm awfully sorry, Dan. Much as I love you and normally agree with you, on this matter we are going to have to be a total variance. Good. Prince Andrew has admitted nothing. He has agreed to nothing. Not only that, the statement does not make him admit to any wrongdoing whatsoever. One has to ask, she brought the case. She's the one who's accepted the settlement. The word substantial in legal terms means appropriate. He could have given $10 or $100 to the charity. It's all very hush-hush. It will be confidential forever. And there's an awful lot more to this than the media friends.
Yeah, but then why not? But then why not face her down in court? Because I agree with you on that. But why not face her in court if he has nothing to hide?
Well, you, Dan, come on, you're not that naive. The judge, Louis A. Kaplan, is a Clinton appointee. David Boies is a Clinton lawyer. Giuffre has accused Clinton of wrongdoing, and she was given the assurance that as long as she brought this case, which would be managed by the Clinton backup team, that she wouldn't be charged with sex trafficking and being a procuress. And she was his main procuress for 2 years. So, you know, come on, it's a little bit...
OK, well, we don't have... I know it's complicated. We don't have evidence of that. Peter Tatchell...
Excuse me, we do. We have various admissions she's made in various trials and various depositions. I'm sorry, there's an awful lot that I find very disconcerting about the media coverage.
But Lady C, I've just said I don't necessarily think that Virginia Giuffre is telling the truth. But this was, you must concede, from a PR point of view, in the court of public opinion, Lady C, this was Prince Andrew's ability to clear his name, and he bottled it.
Well, I am afraid that to an extent, I would agree with you, but I know that Prince Andrew is under grave constraints that have nothing to do. You know, he has to consider his mother's jubilee. He has to consider
yes, and I understand that.
He has all sorts of things to consider aside from his own interest. Had he been a little bit more selfish, and quite frankly, had it been me, I would have been recommending that he fight to the death. But he's made a sacrifice, and he's made a sacrifice for the welfare of the monarchy and the good of his mother.
OK, well, let me bring Peter Tatchell in. Peter Tatchell, you say that this settlement today does not clear Prince Andrew at all.
Absolutely. Basically, it is a financial settlement. He's paid money to close the case. And that has a very nasty whiff. Many people will wonder, why didn't he defend himself? Because you will recall that all along previously, Prince Andrew said that he would never settle and that he wanted a jury trial. Now he's gone back on that. He has allegedly or speculatively paid probably millions to settle this case. So it hasn't been a case resolved by looking at the evidence and by the decision of a judge or jury. It has been a case resolved by big money. And that, I think, taints the whole process. And at the end of the day, none of us now will know the full truth, because even if much of the truth could have been established in a court of law by giving evidence from both sides, that will now not happen.
Lady C, you disagree?
I think a question mark still hangs over Prince Andrew.
Lady C, you wanted to come in there.
Rubbish, utter rubbish. First of all, the sums that have been exchanged are not in the millions. You can bank on it. They are very low sums indeed. Read what it says. Also, Andrew had one big black mark. Let me finish. Andrew had one big black mark against him from the word go. Louis A. Kaplan was clearly prejudiced against him from the word go. And that is something they had to consider, because Louis A. Kaplan made it absolutely clear that he was going to disallow certain crucial elements of the evidence.
Lady C, I've got to pick you up on the payments, though. I've got to pick you up on the payments, because I understand that you're saying the payment to the charity causes is likely to be low, and I accept that. But the payment to Virginia Giuffre herself is many, many millions of pounds. We're hearing it could be £7.5 million at least.
If you believe that, you will believe that she was molested by him, when by her own account she was paid $15,000. She said to get him into bed. That's what she said. She said she managed to get him into bed and was paid $15,000 for it. Excuse me. I'm sorry. You can believe all the rubbish you want. It's utter rubbish. No millions of pounds have been paid to Virginia Giuffre, and not by Prince Andrew.
Peter Tatchell,
I think we can be fairly sure that substantial money.
Years old, so it was not the right crowd for Prince Andrew to be hanging around. You know, Epstein, child sex trafficker, paedophile. Ghislaine Maxwell, proven child sex trafficker now. This was not the right crowd for a Prince of England to be hanging about.
Or indeed for any person to be hanging about with. I mean, it's very clear that Prince Andrew did not make one misjudgment, but a whole series of misjudgments. And he stuck with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, even when the allegations about sex trafficking and abuse were well known. So the question is, why did he do that? And it would seem to confirm the concern that he was very much in part of that plot, that he was a part of it. Now, I want to emphasize, Prince Andrew is innocent until proven guilty, but the optics and the evidence does not look good.
Yep.
If we go back, though, if we go back, you will recall that a friend of Virginia Giuffre's, Caroline Adriano, admitted that in 2001, Virginia phoned her and boasted of having sex with Prince Andrew. And to quote her, she said, Virginia, quote, didn't seem upset about it. She thought it pretty cool. Now, I'm not saying whether I believe her or not, but clearly that's a very different spin from the allegations of sexual abuse and assault.
And I'll just give Lady C the final word here.
Claiming.
And Lady C, that's the shame in this settlement, isn't it? That Virginia will never be challenged in court either.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And I would have challenged her. But the fact of the matter is, what Virginia Giuffre told Caroline Adriano was, I managed to get him into bed. That's what she said. She did. Those were her exact words. And let's remember, Caroline Adriano's evidence was that Virginia Giuffre is the one who procured her, trained her up, and for 2 years ran her. So Virginia Giuffre, a part of this whole settlement has been to protect the fact that Virginia Giuffre had originally accused President Clinton. And while we're on the subject, let's remember that Andrew had a lot fewer dealings with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell than the Clintons did.
There was an opportunity, though, for Prince Andrew to get all of that in the public domain, to have it all discussed in court. He's gone the other way. I understand, Lady C, you're saying he may have done it for the Queen. Personally, I think it was a mistake, but I really appreciate the fiery and good-tempered debate. That was human rights campaigner Peter Tatchell and, of course, the royal author, socialite and broadcaster Lady Colin Campbell. So who do you agree with? Well, Dennis on email says, for Virginia Giuffre, this wasn't about the money, but about getting justice. For Prince Andrew, it was about clearing his name. How did they end up settling out of court? James via Twitter, from the Duke's point of view, a settlement was the least worst option. Legally, there is no admission of court. Morally, it seems to me the story and impression given thus far suggests otherwise. And Helen says, the only good thing is it will save the Queen from further embarrassment. And your verdict is now in. 40% of you agree that Prince Andrew was right to settle out of court, while 60% of you wish that he'd gone the full way. And as I say, there are two sides to this story. On tomorrow night's show, actually, Lady Victoria Harvey is going to be here. She's a close friend of Prince Andrew. She once dated Prince Andrew. She believes that Virginia Giuffre isn't telling the truth. All I'm saying is that Prince Andrew had a chance for this all to be argued in court, and he bottled it. And as a result, there's no path back for him now to public life. Coming up, as the Canadian convoy vows to continue their fight for freedom despite an attempted crackdown, is Liberal despot Justin Trudeau finally about to be undone? And will fellow woke world leaders like Jacinda Ardern be next? Will top columnist Douglas Murray uncancelled at 9:45? Can't wait. But first, as Vladimir Putin reveals his terms for avoiding war in Ukraine, will caving to Russian demands set a dangerous precedent? GB News star Nigel Farage gives his unfiltered take on the crisis in Europe. That's coming up in just 2 minutes.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Douglas Murray on the way, but time now for What the Farage with Nigel. And breaking tonight, Vladimir Putin says Russia has decided to partially withdraw troops from near Ukraine as he declares there is room for further discussion with the West.
Do we want war or not? Of course not. That is why we have offered our proposals to start the negotiation process, which should lead to an agreement of providing equal security for everybody, including our country.
But is this just a ruse, with a possible invasion predicted to begin as soon as 1 a.m? Well, Boris Johnson today sounded doubtful about Russia's true intentions. It's a central point in Moscow's eyes is Ukrainian membership of NATO. The Kremlin wants it off the table for its smaller neighbour. Ukraine says it's its right as an independent country. Nigel Farage here now. And look, Nigel, I think Ukraine has a right to join NATO, but you don't think it's worth it. It's not worth this fight with Russia.
I've been troubled for 30 years, and good evening. I've been troubled for 30 years about the European Union and NATO seeking to extend ever eastwards. Doing so has been a massive geopolitical mistake. Remember, Dan, in 2014, the democratically elected leader of Ukraine was brought down in a coup, mercifully a bloodless one, but brought down by people in the squares of Kiev waving European Union flags, because the European Union had been pumping in pre-accession aid. That, to you and me, is British taxpayers' money, amongst much. And so the EU actually have played by far the worst role in this. But NATO goes on insisting that if the Ukraine wants to join, then that's just fine by them. And it's time we recognised, historically, the British above all have seen something called the buffer state, where you don't encroach up to the borders of a country that is suspicious of you. Can you imagine what we'd be saying if Putin was trying to extend his alliances to the West? So for many in Russia, the thought of Ukraine joining NATO is rather like the Cuban Missile Crisis in reverse. And Dan, what I'm pleading and arguing is this. Do we want to avoid a war? Yes. Do we want better relations with Russia? And by far, things are far from perfect with Putin, but do we want to have better relations with Russia? Because we have to recognize the real threat actually is China. Yes, we do. Does it make sense to sit down round a table and negotiate? And it costs us nothing to say, we don't want Ukraine to join NATO. It is a deeply divided, very corrupt country. There is no advantage for us or any other NATO member in Ukraine joining NATO. That's the first thing to recognise. The second thing is to try to convince Brussels, and this is not going to be easy, to try and convince Brussels to stop their ever eastward expansion too. The Russians don't think just about World War II. They think going back centuries about the fact they've been invaded, and they worry about being encircled. Do you know something? In life, if you want to solve a conflict, the first thing to do is to put yourself in the mind of the other person. And I think there's a serious, sensible negotiation to be had here with Putin. And I regret the fact that so many in the West now see this as some sort of virility test. They're not prepared to give up anything. And in doing so, they are risking an accidental outbreak of war. And I say that because I genuinely do not think Putin wants to have a war, a bloody war, with people that he regards as being fellow kinsmen. And yet no European leader has shown, no American leader, no British leader has shown the foresight to say, right, we can sit down and talk about all of these things. I'm not, I've been saying this. I remember in 2014 saying in the European Parliament, you guys have actually caused this coup. And of course, I was written off as a Putin lover and all the rest of it. I just want us to have better relations with Russia, and I think it's achievable.
So, Nigel, let's take that scenario then. Say the EU and Biden and Boris all came out and declared, OK, sorry, Ukraine, you're not going to ever be able to be part of NATO. It's not on the table at the moment, but it's never happening. And they concede that to Putin. Isn't it naive to think Putin's going to say, oh, thank you very much, guys, I'm off now. I'm going to be a good boy now. He's not, is he? He's not going to stop.
Well, if you remove the casus belli in the short term, take away his excuse for war. Oh, and by the way, Dan, did you notice last week he had a summit with the Chinese communist leaders? We're driving Russia into the arms of China. This is not clever. geopolitics. Now, I'm not an appeaser. I'm not a soft guy. I'm not someone that gives in. But I do think sometimes in a negotiation, if both sides sit around a table and both are prepared to make some sensible, serious concessions, that way comes peace. Is Putin somebody that wants Russia to extend? Yes, he is. Should we be suspicious? Yes, we should. Would we want to take our mums to meet him for tea on a Sunday afternoon? Probably not. Probably not. But as I say, the real threat to the world is not coming from Vladimir Putin. It's coming from communist China. And
isn't
all he's asked...
Yeah. I get that, right? But isn't his age a big issue in all of this too, Nigel? Because he's pushing 70. He doesn't want to be doing this in 10 years' time. He probably doesn't even want to be doing this in 5 years' time. And he certainly doesn't trust his successor, whoever it may be, to have the same force and power as him. So there's a motivation for him to go hard over the next couple of years, isn't there?
Well, but there's not a motivation for him to follow what they did back in 1980 when they invaded Afghanistan, lost huge numbers of men and lots of treasure. And he knows that if he goes into Ukraine, many Western Ukrainians will fight like crazy. Their memories of what the Soviets have done to them, I know maybe Soviet and Russia is not a fair analogy, but I think that's how it'll be seen. I mean, this would cost Putin in terms of lives, in terms of reputation, in terms of money. It might put the oil price up and the gas price up, but it would cost him a fortune. So look, I don't think he really wants war. I think what he has done quite cleverly, because he is, whether we like him or not, it's irrelevant. He's a very, very good player of the whole political game. He's exposed the divisions within the European Union. He's exposed the complete failure of America now under Biden to provide leadership for the Western world. So he's already had a couple of wins out of this. We've got to sit down sensibly. And I heard Liz Truss, our so-called foreign secretary this morning, not prepared to concede an inch on NATO or any of it. And it's time for a really big geopolitical rethink. And as I say, I believe this for the last 30 years. I felt yesterday I was a voice crying in the wilderness on this. Today I saw Mark Armand, strategist, with a big centre page piece in the Daily Mail. And I think there are others now coming round to my point of view. It's the old Churchillism, isn't it? War is better than war. And whilst we have leaders of the Western world flying around the place, no one's offering anything. This is not appeasement. This is common sense.
Well, I respect your analysis always, Nigel. Fascinating insight into what is a very tricky situation. That might be one of the understatements of the year. Nigel Farage, thank you so much. And of course, Nigel back 7 p.m. tomorrow night here on GB News. Coming up, should free COVID tests be axed in order to finally get us living with COVID? And should Drakeford and Sturgeon stop protesting, except they can't keep us terrified forever? I'll explore that in my Media Buzz. Plus, we'll see how the newspapers have covered the big news of the day, including Prince Andrew's surprise settlement with his accuser, Virginia Giuffre. But first, as the Freedom Convoy stands firm despite Justin Trudeau's best efforts, have the world's wokest leaders finally met their match? Top columnist Douglas Murray is uncancelled and live straight after the break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Time now for Uncancelled. We're Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And breaking tonight, the inspirational Freedom Convoy leaders have vowed to stay put, despite Justin Trudeau enforcing authoritarian emergency powers. Yesterday, the Canadian Prime Minister invoked the Emergencies Act in a desperate attempt to quell the trucker protesters who have achieved global attention for their fight against COVID restrictions. The Act allows his administration to freeze truckers' personal and corporate bank accounts, suspend the insurance on their rigs, and also tow vehicles away. Authorities have already started forcibly removing blockades, but Freedom Convoy leaders are imploring the protesters not to give in.
I know there's people leaving. Please don't leave. Stand your ground. There's help coming from the south. Stand your ground, people, and stand up for your rights and freedoms. Thank you.
Good on them. Good on them. Well, as Douglas Murray says, Trudeau and the New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, the woke darlings of the Western world, are finally getting their comeuppance. Well, I'm delighted to say Douglas joins me now. Douglas, I loved your column in the Daily Telegraph about, or maybe it was the Sunday Telegraph actually, about Trudeau and Ardern, because it feels like politicians like them are now the ones spreading the politics of division and hatred, and they're being exposed for it.
That's exactly right. Trudeau and Ardern came to office and have governed to the extent that they have governed in office by pretending to be as filled with empathy as it's possible to be. Ardern's face positively crumples up with empathy. Trudeau uses this fake means of communication to talk about how empathetic he is. By the way, as I say in the column, it's a total crock in politics. There is no evidence at all that being filled with empathy means that you are competent to run a country or to make the decisions that are necessary to govern a country wisely. And it's perfectly clear that Justin Trudeau in particular not only doesn't have any competency to govern, but doesn't actually have the empathy that he came to office boasting about having. It's perfectly clear that Justin Trudeau has no empathy for the truckers and the others in his country who disagree with his policies. He is trying to freeze them out of Ottawa. He is ordering police to steal their gasoline, to steal their wood. He ordered GoFundMe to seize the funds that was sent to the truckers. He's now ordered the banks in Canada to freeze the accounts of truckers and people supporting the truckers. This is a gross overreach by any political leader. And he's ordering the police, and he may in due course order the army to get the truckers out. I would just say in these situations, it is the duty of those police and those members of the armed forces to, if not shirk their duty, then perhaps do what Justin himself did when this crisis began and pretend that they met someone who once danced with someone who had COVID, and perhaps they could go into isolation until the demands, the absolutely totalitarian demands of Justin Trudeau on the armed forces of his country cease.
Well, Douglas, what's so fascinating to me, right, because you know very often I deplore social media networks and how miserable it's made us. But you've got Ardern and Trudeau following the same playbook of saying these are all right-wing extremists, they are Nazis, they are white supremacists. Well, we can see for ourselves, Douglas, on all of these live feeds from around the world, and especially in Canada and New Zealand, that the protesters are nothing of the sort. And I saw a great video from Canada earlier today of the Freedom Convoy protesters embracing the police, singing the national anthem with the police. Yes. So I think, actually, Douglas, they are starting to shirk their responsibilities a little bit, and they're not prepared to follow the madness from Trudeau.
Absolutely. Trudeau should fall. His government should fall over this. And I think that if he continues to overreach like this, it will fall. He will be out of office. He has got himself into a corner because he has portrayed the public as his enemies. Now, of course, he has some supporters among the Canadian people still. But once you start to pretend that all of your opponents and critics are Nazis and racists and misogynists, as he has repeatedly said, then you can't deal with them, can you? In fact, you can't even live in the same country as them, can you? And so you start by seizing their bank accounts, stealing their money, stealing their wood, freezing them out, making life impossible for them. Where does he go next? Very hard to see in a democracy. So I think little Justin has just got, potentially, to the beginning of the end of his reign of incompetency.
I hope so. But Douglas, he's acting like a COVID dictator. How can a virus with a 99% survival rate and improving, by the way, thanks to Omicron, how can a virus like that morph leaders into these weird sort of authoritarians?
Because as with Ardern in New Zealand, when you've gone this far, you have to keep going. They cannot admit the mistake. They cannot admit the appalling cost of the policies that they continue to try to implement. And so they have to keep going right up until the end. Now, we'll see. Last week, Ardern instituted new restrictions in New Zealand, just as the rest of the world was basically getting out of all restrictions. But it's Trudeau that is the one to watch on this. It is the people propping him up in power who we should keep an eye on. They are using completely totalitarian methods against their own citizens. And by the way, it was quite right that Marcus Fish, the Conservative MP today, called on the British Foreign Secretary to intervene. I think all democratic governments at this point should start to ask questions of their Canadian counterparts and ask what exactly is happening to the citizenry of Canada, who do deserve freedom, deserve the right to protest, and do deserve a better leader than they have in this ridiculous, empathetic, and inept poster boy, Justin Trudeau.
Beautifully put, Douglas Murray. Best analysis in the business as ever. So good to talk, Douglas. Thank you. We'll speak soon.
Speak soon.
It's 10 p.m. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. And as Prince Andrew agrees a settlement with his accuser Virginia Giuffre, I'll take a look at how tomorrow's newspapers are covering this shock ending to his sexual assault lawsuit on their front pages. That's next with my superstar panel, former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Should more hospitality venues stand up for freedom of choice? Well, celebrity chef Anthony Worrell Thompson was branded anti-vax after opening up his pub to the unjabbed. He'll join me live in the studio at 10:20 to discuss why he has no regrets about joining the front line of the battle for COVID equality. As Tory Party Chairman Oliver Dowding condemns the woke ideology infiltrating our schools just as teachers ban gender. That's right, gender banned in the classrooms. Now, are you fearful for the future of our children? Well, Darren Grimes weighs in on the twisted priorities of today's education system as the outsider at 10:40. After self-serving protests by Mad Dog Drakeford and Scheming Sturgeon, do you agree with the PM's plan to axe free COVID tests? I'll put that to my panel in just a moment. Plus, as Novak Djokovic pledges to make the ultimate sacrifice for bodily autonomy.
Principles of decision-making on my body are more important than any title.
So is Novak right to give up his chance of becoming the most successful male tennis star of all time by continuing to refuse the COVID vaccine. Plus, are you ready to get hot under the corset once again? Yes, Bridgerton is back. I'll bring you a first look at the new series as we break down the day's top talking points in the media buzz at 10:30. And as ever, stay up with us this hour because before the end of the show, I will crown tonight's greatest Briton and Union Jackass. But before all of that, the news headlines at 10 with Polly Middlehurst.
Good evening. Your top stories tonight on GB News. Royal experts say Prince Andrew is unlikely to return to royal life after settling a civil sex abuse case against him in the United States. The Duke of York has agreed to donate a substantial sum of money to Virginia Giuffre's charity. Prince Andrew will also demonstrate his regret, as the statement says, for his association with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Lawyer Lisa Bloom, who represents 8 victims of Epstein, welcomed the settlement as a victory for Miss Giuffre.
She was able to accomplish what nobody else has. That is to get Prince Andrew to stand squarely with victims of sex trafficking and sexual abuse, to make a significant contribution to her charity, which will help other victims in cases that don't get media coverage, where celebrities aren't involved, but where many women are still suffering.
Lisa Bloom. Well, in other news tonight, US President Joe Biden says an imminent Russian attack on Ukraine is still a possibility. That comes after Russia failed to send a representative to the European peace talks that were happening today. Boris Johnson says the Kremlin is sending mixed signals as Moscow insists it is pulling some troops back from the Ukrainian border. NATO says there's no evidence that's actually happening. President Biden is urging Russia to engage in talks with the West.
The United States has put on the table concrete ideas to establish a security environment in Europe. We're proposing new arms control measures, new transparency measures, new strategic stability measures. These measures will apply to all parties, NATO and Russia alike.
Joe Biden. Now, in Wales, all children aged between 5 and 11 years old are being offered the COVID jab. The Welsh Government says it's taken the decision after reading the yet-to-be-published report from the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation, the JCVI, as it's called. It's already given the go-ahead to vaccinate at-risk 5 to 11-year-olds. Meanwhile, research by the UK Health Security Agency shows people who are vaccinated are less likely to be affected by long COVID. It found 2 doses of Pfizer, AstraZeneca or Moderna, or even the single shot of Johnson & Johnson cut the risk of developing lasting symptoms by around half. In the United States, the husband of a woman killed on a film set has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the actor Alec Baldwin. Cinematographer Helena Hutchins died last October after a prop gun Mr. Baldwin was holding went off during a rehearsal for a movie. Alec Baldwin claims he did not pull the trigger. Helena's family lawyer is Brian Parnish.
A young boy who will never have a mother, and it's a man who lost his wife, who he had a long-term great marriage with. So we need to have them be fully compensated.
Brian Parnish speaking there. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now time for the final part of Dan Wootton. And tonight...
Tomorrow's news tonight, now on our Media Buzz. Very first look at the front pages, and one story dominating, you won't be surprised to know. The Independent leads with Prince Andrew's shock settlement with his accuser Virginia Giuffre. The Queen's favourite son will pay an undisclosed amount to the Australian and donate to a victim support charity to stop his sex abuse case going to a civil trial. Also on the front page, Putin claims Russia doesn't want war, but the West continue to wait nervously for signs of a retreat. And in the Metro, same story. Duke pays up at last, they say, as he abandons his fight. They report the settlement is said to be more than £10 million. They also allege that it was demanded by Andrew's older brother, Prince Charles, to avoid a trial hanging over the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. My superstar panel back with me now, former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Now, it looks like free COVID testing is set to be scrapped next week as part of Boris Johnson's living with COVID strategy. And of course, it's got Mad Dog Drakeford and scheming Sturgeon all riled up. According to The Times, ministers are preparing to announce the end of free testing for millions of people as part of plans to cut the ongoing costs of the pandemic as cases and deaths continue to fall. Healthy adults would no longer be eligible to order free lateral flow tests on the NHS, with plans to scale back PCR testing. Well, not surprisingly, it's prompted a furious row with the Scottish and Welsh leaders who want the testing gravy train to continue. Such a move from the UK government would see a fall in funding for the devolved nations, meaning cash for tests would need to be found elsewhere in the Scottish and Welsh government's budget. Personally, I think we've got to move on now. We don't need to be obsessively testing folk with no symptoms. And if Sturgeon and Drakeford are so intent on continuing the COVID hysteria, then they can pay for it. Oh, Dawn Neeson. I mean, it's just so typical, isn't it? They want free testing if Westminster pays for it. Well, we're all paying for it then. We are all paying for this testing.
The thing is, it's not free, is it? We keep saying, oh, it's free testing. It's not free. It's from the NHS budget, which we all pay for. OK, so it's not free. We are paying for it. And why are we now going to waste money when national insurance is going up, the NHS needs sorting out? Why are we going to carry on wasting money testing perfectly healthy people when they don't need it? I mean, Calvin, if you're ill, just don't go to work. That's what we used to do. It worked perfectly well.
Well, Calvin, if you're so desperate to know and confirm that it's COVID, then pay the £5 or whatever it is to get a test.
Absolutely. Why should I pay for the COVID fanatics to take their tests? And like Dawn said, it's not free, but big pharma and big business have made an absolute killing of the public purse, and that's not right or fair on anybody. And of course we shouldn't continue to pay for Scotland and Wales to have these so-called free tests. Of course the people should pay for them themselves. I think these power-mad contrarians are letting it get to their heads, quite frankly.
Rebecca, you think free testing needs to continue. Why?
I do. I don't think you necessarily need to be able to have it sent to your house. I think at the moment, you can literally click a button and it comes to your house. So anybody, myself included, will just order them. But I do think there needs to be provision to be able to get a free test in the same way that you can get a free chlamydia test, you can get a free HIV test, you can get a free all kinds of tests, particularly if you're somebody who...
People aren't doing them every single day like some people are at the moment.
And I'm not suggesting we need to do it every day, but I do think if I was going to something full of elderly or vulnerable people, I would take a test first. Now, personally, I can just about afford to pay for it. But I do think if you only got 20 quid disposable income a week, you can see that somebody wouldn't want to spend 25% of their disposable income on tests. So to be able to go to a place and get free ones if you need them is very important.
The problem is, Calvin, this is capitalism, isn't it? And the only way to take out financial value on all of these things. And at the moment, because of, I think, completely hysterical advice, which we've been living under for years and years and years, some folk have become addicted to this testing thing. They test every day. And if they have a little sniffle, immediately they think, oh, I've got to find out if it's COVID.
We've become dependent on the state. And it's not just the tests, it's the wider picture. Furlough was pretty much universal basic income on a test run. We've become dependent on staying at home, letting the state tell us when to go out, what to do, who to socialise with, when to take a test, who we're allowed to see, who we're allowed to hug. It's actually gone past authoritarian statism at this point. It's bonkers.
Why are we saying that people are taking them every day? Where is that information from?
Because lots of workplaces really embraced the fact that they didn't have to pay for the test because they knew that the government would provide them for free. So
which workplaces are still having people test every day?
My university makes people test every day.
Every single day. OK, so that I do think is a bit mad.
And even if it's not every day, a lot do things like recommend 2 tests a week. And these are for people, Rebecca, who don't have any symptoms whatsoever. It's just as a condition to continuing, as Calvin says, going to university, or for some other people going to a private workplace. It's nonsensical, by the way, given that most of these folk are getting on packed trains or buses or going to the supermarket on the way. So it doesn't.
I mean, would you agree that if you were going to visit an old person in an old people's home, it would be a good idea to test beforehand?
I think at some point we've got to move on from that.
I agree, because, I mean, the thing is, you're talking about visiting vulnerable people, not just elderly people, but would you test for flu, for example?
If I could, I would. If there was a test I could take, I would.
So why would you do it for now?
But Rebecca, we have to return to common sense and common sense with our health.
People
and common
are
sense.
Common sense is not that common. People are quite thick a lot of the time.
But common sense.
the ones
well,
from
I
the
actually
test
have a lot
supplement,
more
no.
faith in the British people than you. And common sense suggests that you stay away from vulnerable people if you have symptoms.
But if
so
you're
if you're coughing and
asymptomatic,
spluttering,
which like what 1 in 5 people is asymptomatic, 1 in 4 people is asymptomatic.
I thought that was
well, a lot of people.
Why are we testing healthy people?
I presume because we assume they might have symptoms. Look, if I was going somewhere where somebody who caught it could get really, really ill, I don't think it would be a big ask for me to take a test. I agree, every day seems a bit mad, and also the amount of plastic going in the ocean is not good, blah, blah, blah.
No.
Just not a good, sensible system. But I think we can agree that if people want to test when they're visiting somebody who's vulnerable, that's not a bad or stupid thing to do.
It's all a big scam. I literally just got back from holiday. I've got to test tomorrow. I've already been on the flight, packed with people. It's already happened.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I've still
but
got to pay
by
out
the way,
of the nose.
but you're shelling out £60 to one of these private companies, and it is a scam.
Yeah, it is
the
a scam.
amount of money that these companies are making from testing. And I mean, look, I'd love to actually go further and axe all tests for travel. But what the issue is that while we might be coming out of this pandemic, you've got all of the other hysterical countries still completely addicted to it.
We have to lead the way, don't we?
We do.
But also, if they're going to get...
And I think masks should go on flights as well.
Well, if they're going to get rid of this thing where it's going to be that you don't have to isolate if you have a positive test, then it does become fairly redundant to test if you're just going to go out breathing all over people.
Yeah.
It's completely redundant. It's completely redundant. It's a waste of money now. And look, the cancel culture mob appear to have moved on from censoring Jimmy Carr and are now targeting a BBC golden boy. Graham Norton, believe it or not, woke warriors complained in their droves after the legendary chat show host dared to make a joke about Ukraine in his opening monologue.
Hello, good evening. You're all so welcome. Great show tonight. My guests are going to have such a good time. They won't want to go home. Oh, and on the subject of refusing to leave... Yeah. Can't make me. Boris still hanging on in there. And this week, he flew off to Ukraine. Or if you're watching on Catch-Up TV, he flew off to southwest Russia.
Funny, right?
That's good.
Well, lefty snowflakes seem intent on killing off comedy once and for all. And actually, the BBC, for once, maybe they're starting to listen, Calvin Robinson, because for once, they haven't given in. They released a statement saying, "We appreciate the seriousness of the current situation and can assure you there was no intention to cause any offence with these remarks. Comedy is one of the most subjective areas of programming, and while no subject is off limits, we appreciate that some jokes may resonate differently for those with personal experience of a particular situation." I mean, look, great that the BBC haven't given in. I would personally disagree that comedy isn't to offend. I think sometimes it absolutely is to offend.
Of course, that's the point of comedy. It has to. It's full of microaggressions. But the BBC's on the back foot. They know they're going to get defunded in 2027 if they don't buck up their ideas. So, of course, they're going to start towing the line.
But why are we saying that it's lefty snowflakes? Where is that data coming from that it's lefties who complain?
Who else would complain about that?
All sorts of people. I'm lefty. I couldn't think of anything less offensive. My Twitter full of permanently offended people. Not one person on there offended by this. I think I would like to know why you are claiming that it's the lefties that complain.
Oh, it absolutely is.
It's
We know what they're like.
basis?
We
On
know what
what
they're like.
basis?
I've seen the people who are complaining. And the other types of people who have that thing, they have the EU flag
The blue
in
heart.
their
The blue
profile.
heart.
What does the blue heart stand for?
I like the NHS.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Like anyone has
and then FB, what does the FB thing stand for? It's something
full
like
Brexit,
Europe.
proper exit. I don't know.
Oh, God.
I'm sorry, I have not heard anything
These people
compelling
are
that this is
the
lefties. This is just people who are offended. That's not a left thing or a right thing. It's just being a knob.
However, being a bit of a left-wing snowflake, I did find the Jimmy Carr joke offensive, I have to say. There are some...
You can find it offensive. You can find it
thought-
offensive, but are you saying that he should be cancelled and lose his
I don't
job
think
and that
anyone
Netflix
should be
take this
cancelled. However, I
series
think there
down?
are some subjects that are off-limits
No,
for jokes.
Dawn.
Yeah,
which ones?
but-
Who decides which ones are off limits?
But I just think, like, joking about, for example, the rape and murder of Sarah Everard. I mean, is that going to be a joke?
But I feel like I would just never...
beyond
I would never
There are some
consume
things
someone's
that are
media if
just
they did
not-
that.
Right.
But
Sorry,
and I
there was
would,
something.
and also I think it's about how good a comedian you are. I don't think there's anyone funny enough to make that funny, and I didn't think Jimmy Carr's joke was funny. But I'm just not going to consume his media.
But for me, what this comes down to, it has to be up to the individuals themselves and then the private companies to make those decisions. And Netflix, which is a very powerful company, which is very concerned, by the way, about people subscribing. So if they thought 10 tens of thousands of people were going to unsubscribe because of that joke, they wouldn't have included
But
the joke.
they've been amazing, Netflix. They
Well, they have.
They
With
stood by
Chappelle
during
as well.
the whole trans
Exactly.
hoopla. They are real beacons of free speech,
Well,
Netflix.
they have.
Really are.
And my point is that they shouldn't have the government threatening them with some sort of sanction for standing up for free speech.
Yeah, but it's
up to
easy
them
points,
to
isn't
decide.
it? It's really easy when everyone's cross with you to stand up and be like, oh, Jimmy Carr's behaved badly, look at him. That's what everybody does. It's just constant point scoring. It's very tiring.
Rebecca Reed, Galvin Robinson, Dawn Neeson, thank you so much. And do stand by, because coming up, is Novak Djokovic right to sacrifice his chance of becoming the best male tennis player in history statistically to argue full bodily autonomy? I say hell yes, but I'll open that up to my superstar panel when the Media Buzz returns at 10:30. But before that, do hospitality venues need to take a leaf out of Djokovic's book and fight harder for their unvaccinated customers? One man who did is celebrity Anthony Worrell Thompson. He'll discuss his brush with cancellation and being on the front line of the fight for freedom straight after the break.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. The pandemic has truly tested our democracy's resolve as people willingly ditched rights for restrictions. But some unlikely heroes have emerged on the side of freedom, like Anthony Worrell Thompson, who became a household name as a celebrity chef, but demonstrated his appetite for liberty last month as he openly encouraged the unvaccinated to dine at his pub. Anthony put up a sign at the Greyhound in Oxfordshire that read, "We do not discriminate, race, gender, age, disability, vaccinated or unvaccinated, everyone equal here, everyone welcome." Well, unbelievably, the Ready Steady Cook star faced backlash from the usual scaremongering suspects in the mainstream media, but on the grounds amongst real people, the response was actually hugely positive, as folk thanked him for standing up against the cruel segregation of the unjabbed. Now, aside from being a liberty-loving chef, Anthony is hugely successful and renowned as a restaurateur who opened his first in Knightsbridge in 1981 and has launched several successful restaurants since. He has also become a regular star on our TV screens, hosting BBC 2's Saturday Kitchen and Food and Drink. He also appeared on ITV's hit reality show, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. And I'm delighted to say Anthony is in here with me tonight. I mean, Anthony, I find this so extraordinary that in 2022, putting up a sign which says, I don't discriminate, can get you cancelled. We've gone mad, haven't we?
We have gone mad. I mean, to me, it's about the discrimination mainly. I mean, we stand with COVID, we stand with Brexit to divide this country, split people against each other, and that's not what it should be about. I mean, COVID, you know, I'm not against vaccination by any means. And in the early days, it definitely prevented people from getting to hospital, ICUs. Now, we've seen it with Prince Charles, had it twice. Several of my family have had it twice, and relatives.
I have.
You've had it. Touch wood, I haven't. But it's not preventing people from getting it anymore. It may be preventing people from staying out of hospital, but it's not preventing you spreading it. Yeah. So really, we have to learn to live with it. And to my point of view, we've had little or no objections to that sign. And for the most part, it's been support.
So it was a whole load of hysteria whipped up on social media and by the media.
Yeah, as always. You know, it was a bad news day, perhaps. But you know, this country stands. It's got to stand on its own 2 feet now. You know, we've chosen Brexit, rightly or wrongly. We've chosen Brexit, and we've chosen Boris, rightly or wrongly. And it's time to you know, we are leading the way now as far as COVID goes. Other countries are starting to follow, you know, apart from Canada and New Zealand, perhaps. But generally, what do you say, really? I mean, it's ridiculous that in this we can discriminate against people.
Yeah, and don't you think it's the countries that have these draconian restrictions, that are banning folk from going to a restaurant, from going to a pub, from going to a cinema, they're the countries that seem to be emerging from this divided. So I think it's so important that here in the UK we do lead the world in saying, actually, no, we support bodily autonomy, we support freedom of speech. 98% of people have COVID antibodies, so you can go wherever you like.
Absolutely. I mean, it is time. I mean, you know, love him or hate him, Boris has got it right, in my opinion. He seems to have ignored recommendations recently and has chosen, you know, whether it's to diffuse the situation from Partygate, who knows? But the point is, I think he's got it right, that we should move on now. We should open the country. We need business. You know, what is Spain going to do, France going to do, Italy going to do without tourists? We need tourists, they need tourists. You know, and for mandatory rules like in Italy where you've got to be double vaxxed if you're over 50, I mean, it's about freedom of choice, surely. I mean, Djokovic has decided not to put a vaccine in his body. That has to be his choice.
Absolutely, we're going to be talking about that in just a moment. Your industry, of course, Anthony, one of the businesses that was just decimated by these 2 years of lockdowns. Loads of restrictions that you had to do that made absolutely no scientific sense. Do you remember those rules like the Scotch egg thing? You've got to be out by 10 p.m. Oh, by the way, put these little plastic sheets up, even though the science proves they are utterly futile and useless at stopping the spread of COVID. So you had to spend all of the money on that. And then on a whim, the government could just shut you down.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, you know, does COVID know that they're not effective after 10 o'clock at night? You know, I mean, what we were doing when we got people out by 10 is you're driving everyone into a pub or a restaurant to get in there before 10. You're all packed together. You're all leaving together. You're all on the train together.
It was bonkers.
Nonsense. Total nonsense.
And we should never have accepted it, though, should we, as a society? But it was difficult for folk like you, because what did you do? If you broke the rules, you'd have some box-ticking, clipboard-holding local council official shut you down.
Absolutely. I mean, the trouble is that we're not a country that has revolutions, really. We don't do block motorways. Well, for the most part, we don't block motorways, you know, like the French do.
The insulate Bristol.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, we sort of go along with it, and I think actually that's what Boris is not doing. He's not going along with it. You know,
about time.
Absolutely about time.
But I want to talk about Boris because you wrote a really interesting column for the Daily Express defending the Prime Minister, actually, which not many people in the media have done. And you say, and I'm with you on this actually, sick of Partygate. This is a media obsession. We have to move on for the good of the country now.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a witch hunt. If you actually analyse what's going on in the rest of the world, Ukraine, sort of China hovering over Taiwan, Myanmar, the civil war that's happening there, and we're worried about a few tea parties. Listen, there are people who've died out there, and that's tragic. And of course, they must think Boris is absolutely ghastly. And I support that view. But at the end of the day, it's a few people having drinks, him in there for 10 minutes, having his cake presented to him. It's not good, but it's so small in
not the crime of the century.
In the bigger picture. You know, I mean, Tony Blair took us to war, and he's now a lord. You know, I mean...
No, I agree. I think, to me, I wish people would look at it in a different way. I think it shows these rules should never have been in place. They should never have shut down your pubs, your restaurants, because actually the people at number 10 Downing Street weren't scared of the virus. They were still socialising. And I just feel like the discussion is all wrong. The rules were ridiculous. And the Johns Hopkins University study from last week shows lockdowns only reduced deaths by 0.2%. But what we did do is we decimated businesses. We're seeing what's happening with the cost of living crisis now, aren't we? And actually, that will end up killing more people in the long run.
Well, also, you know, the mental problems that went on at the time. You know, people, youngsters who are held in prison almost in their own homes, not allowed out, when that's the time they should be out enjoying themselves.
And how did you cope with it mentally, being locked up and not able to run your businesses?
Well, I'm a pretty strong character. We turned to takeaways, and they were very successful. And as soon as they relaxed the rules with the garden, luckily the weather wasn't bad. Actually, good old British public tolerated the wind and the rain.
Yes, oh my God.
And they came out
I remember
in
some
force.
meals that I had. I never want to repeat them, but we were just so desperate, weren't we, to help these businesses out.
Yeah.
Although, my God, it was infuriating. Well, Anthony, look, I think you did absolutely the right thing, and thank you for standing up for what's right.
Well, someone's got to.
Indeed. That was renowned restaurateur and celebrity chef Anthony Worrell Thompson. Now, coming up, as gender is erased by teachers, is woke ideology in classrooms putting your children's education and even their futures at risk? Well, Darren Grimes schools us in The Outsider at 10:40. But next, as Anthony just mentioned, is it fair for Novak Djokovic, the poster boy for bodily autonomy, to have to sacrifice his dream of becoming the top male tennis player in history just because he's unvaccinated? We'll explore that in the Media Buzz. Plus, more of those newspaper front pages hot off the press.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Well, let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now on our Media Buzz. And lots of front pages have just been delivered, one story all over them. And let's start with the Daily Telegraph, actually. Really interesting news from them. They report that the settlement with Virginia Giuffre exceeds £12 million and, crucially, will be paid for in part by the Queen. Her Majesty has already spent millions funding the Duke of York's legal fight, and the terms of this deal prevents either side from discussing the case or the settlement itself in public. In other news, US President Joe Biden has warned the threat of a Russian invasion of Ukraine remains very much a possibility. The Eye also leads with the Prince Andrew civil sex case settlement. They report a similar number to the Telegraph, but £10 million. Also on the front page, Putin toys with the West, despite some Russian troops having returned to their permanent base after, quote, successful military drills. UK officials are still suspicious as Russia builds failed hospitals near the Ukrainian border. The Guardian quotes royal author David McClure in their coverage of the Prince Andrew settlement. According to him, this was always the outcome the royal family wanted in terms of damage limitation. Plus, Sir Keir Starmer has called on the government to cancel the national insurance rise and act to stop soaring fuel bills. The Daily Mirror, they've got the same £12 million figure, actually, as the Daily Telegraph. Insiders say there was intense pressure from the very top, including the Queen and Prince Charles, to prevent the case going to trial. The Daily Mail also lead with the disgraced Duke's settlement, which they describe as a £10 million humiliation. The paper also reports that although the settlement contained no formal admission of liability or an apology, it said he now accepted she was a victim of abuse, that's Giuffre, and regretted his association with Jeffrey Epstein. This is important news too, though, and we discussed it on the show last night, of course. The Welsh newspaper, the Western Mail, leading with the news that the COVID jab is to be offered to children as young as 5 in Wales. The health minister there said she had read the yet-to-be-published report by the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation and decided to further roll out the jab to 5 to 11-year-olds. Of course, the Westminster government, Boris Johnson, waiting to announce his plans. We're going to get it on Monday when he talks about how we're going to learn to live with COVID. Personally, there is no need as we leave this pandemic, as we emerge from this pandemic, to vaccinate healthy 5 to 11-year-olds. It is just madness. More on the media buzz now with tonight's superstar panel. Former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator, Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist, Rebecca Reid. Now, after exposing Australia's mad COVID policies to the world at a great cost to his own sporting career, Novak Djokovic has revealed he is willing to sacrifice his chance of becoming the best male tennis player of all time statistically in order to defend vaccine freedom of choice. Confirming his unvaccinated status for the first time, the Serbian superstar revealed he would be willing to miss out on playing at Wimbledon and other major tournaments after seeing his Australian Open dreams shattered last month when he was deported from Down Under despite originally being granted a medical exemption and a visa.
I understand that not being vaccinated today, I'm unable to travel to most of the tournaments at the moment.
And that's a price you're willing to pay?
That is the price that I'm willing to pay.
Ultimately, are you prepared to forego the chance to be the greatest player that ever picked up a racket, statistically, because you feel so strongly about this jab?
Yes. I do.
But as things stand, if this means that you miss the French Open, is that a price you'd be willing to pay?
Yes, that is the price that I'm willing to pay.
And if it means that you miss Wimbledon this year, again, that's a price you're willing to pay?
Yes.
Why, Novak? Why?
Because the principles of decision-making on my body are more important than any title. I was never against vaccination. I understand that globally everyone is trying to put a big effort into handling this virus and seeing hopefully an end soon to this virus, and vaccination is probably the biggest effort that was made. Probably half of the planet was vaccinated, and I fully respect that. But I've always represented and always supported the freedom to choose what you put into your body.
Fascinating interview. Now, currently, Djokovic should be clear to play in Wimbledon, providing the government doesn't impose restrictions on travellers beyond the day 2 test. He might have more trouble with lockdown-loving France. The country's sports minister said last month that all professional athletes who want to compete there would need to be vaccinated. France was offering exemptions for those who have recovered from COVID in the past 6 months, which could have allowed Djokovic, who tested positive in December, to play in May's Open. However, check this out. As of today, the exemption period has been slashed to 4 months. Oh, I wonder why. Regardless, what's important is Djokovic's commitment to liberty and personal medical choice. But that didn't go down well with the Health Secretary Sajid Javid today, who urged him to, quote, reflect on his decision.
The reason that you can have, once again, millions of spectators for sports, including, of course, tennis, whether it's in Australia or in the future Wimbledon, is because of the success of vaccination programs. And it's interesting to note, really, that Mr. Djokovic thinks it's okay for sports spectators, all his fans, to take the vaccine that allows him to get back to play the sport in front of them and earn millions again. It's okay for him to have them take the vaccine, but the vaccine is not okay for him.
Calvin, we're just twisting science these days, aren't we? I mean, the whole point of the vaccination to start with, Kate Bingham actually spoke about it, was to vaccinate the vulnerable and protect those folk from COVID. That's why you have a vaccine, to protect yourself.
Of course it is. A vaccine is supposed to provide immunity, and of course this vaccine provides very little immunity. It lessens the severity, it lessens the chances of death apparently, but it doesn't provide immunity from the virus. Therefore, it's not a vaccine in the true sense that we know vaccines to be. But this good man, this very principled man, has weighed up his own risk analysis. He's already tested positive for the virus in the past, so he should have some natural immunity, which is something we don't talk about enough, which is probably more stronger than the faux immunity provided by the vaccines. However, he's put his health and his beliefs above his career, and I think that is something to be respected and admired. And for people to be demonising him in this way, Sajid Javid, the drug pusher, telling him to reflect on his behaviour, that's what I used to say to my kids at school. It's patronising for a grown man to say to another grown man. It's outrageous behaviour, and it's none of his business, frankly.
Rebecca, what I have an issue with is this anti-vax label. Because if you watched that interview with Novak Djokovic, he makes a very strong case. He talks about his own health, his own well-being, how he's incredibly careful. And I just hate the fact that these days we just immediately say, you're a big old anti-vaxxer, and that means that we can't listen to the argument.
Well, he literally said, I am not anti-vaccine. And he hasn't done what some people on the internet have done, which is start saying it's made of dead bodies or it's going to kill you or make you blind. He hasn't said anything stupid about it. He's just said, I don't want to take it and that I'm not anti-vax. And my biggest, most fundamental belief is my body, my choice. Therefore, even though it's not necessarily the decision that I would always take, I cannot judge him and will not judge him for it. I think the tricky thing is that countries have made decisions. It's not fair when you change the rules for a sports person, but you can't come in to see your newborn grandchild because you're not vaccinated, or your sister or whoever else. So the rules have to be consistent, and these countries have made rules. So unfortunately, he's going to get screwed by those rules, but I do respect his right to make the choice.
But Dawn Neeson, when the country changes those rules to affect him, is it?
Which it looks like France.
Do you think that is actually why France did it?
Well,
directly
it seems very convenient timing.
Quite.
Dawn Neeson, I actually agree with Rebecca on that, but I would say the rules are an ass. The rules have to change across the globe because they make no sense. By the way, it makes no sense that I can enter Australia because I had a vaccine months and months and months ago when Omicron is running wild and I've since had natural infection, but that has nothing to do with it.
No,
it's just odd.
Calvin's right. We don't talk about natural immunity enough. And, you know, I echo the sentiments of everyone here. You know, it's his body, his choice, what he does with it. And I think he's very brave to stand up for it. But he's made it clear that he's had vaccinations in the past, so he doesn't have a problem with vaccinations.
And that's why I think we need to stop using the term anti-vax, because people, I mean, I'm very pro-vaccination, even personally, but I'm very much against the vaccination of children between 5 to 11 years old. So I will be branded an anti-vaxxer for that. That is nuts.
You're not. No, you're just having an opinion on it, and that's why we are demonising people here. We're creating so much division and hatred.
There is a small section of people who should be demonised because they literally deliberately spread misinformation about all vaccines, like MMR creates
autism. People
autism.
shouldn't affect how everybody else is viewed.
Well, I
issues an opinion on it.
I think the really important thing is that we keep the term anti-vax pure so that the people who are actual anti-vaxxers can be reviled to an extent, because it is wrong to just make stuff up. But people who aren't anti-vax, like him, shouldn't be called anti-vaxxers because it weakens the term and it weakens the description anti-vaxxer.
Well, I'm sorry, that's all you hear leaders like Jacinda Ardern and Justin Trudeau talking about. Even the slightest bit of nuance, even the slightest debate, and you are some sort of scumbag anti-vaxxer. And you know, actually, all they're doing, Calvin, is they're undermining the term anti-vaxxer because it's been so weakened now. People aren't embarrassed anymore for being called an anti-vaxxer because actually all it means is that we think about who should have a vaccine, when they should have it and why they should have it. And if that makes you an anti-vaxxer, then so be it.
Well, they're not just undermining the term, they're undermining our faith in science, because there are going to be more important vaccines that come out in the future and people are going to be questioning them a lot harder and put their own health at risk.
There has been a negative uptake in people getting their children the MMR vaccine recently, and that is so dangerous.
I know,
so stupid.
but that was so inevitable when you start undermining vaccine confidence. And again, I will just repeat, Kate Bingham, when she first procured all of these vaccines brilliantly, she said on the record, there is no need to vaccinate the entire population. It makes sense to jab the vulnerable. What changed? It's Downton Abbey After Dark, and finally Netflix have satisfied fans with a tantalising preview of Bridgerton Series 2 ahead of its release on March the 25th. I'm excited about this. The teaser features flashes of our lusty heroes, Anthony Bridgerton, played by Jonathan Bailey, and the new character, Kate Sharma. She was in Broadchurch, and it does feature them, I have to be honest, in states of undress and moments of passion. That's why we love this show, right? We also see the Derry Girls actress, love her, Nicola Coughlan, lean into her mischievous side after being revealed as the mysterious scandal spreader, Lady Whistleblower, at the end of season 1. Spoiler, sorry. Rebecca Reid, sorry, I got that wrong.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we need to combat fake news here. It is Lady Whistledown, not Lady Whistleblower. Get your facts right down.
I quite like Whistleblower. I think it's and I've never watched it.
But Dan, the Duke isn't returning.
No, he's out. I'm glad he's out. Everyone wants him back. No, let's move on. Okay. Let's move on.
I'm saying
too much of him.
Baby boom in December. That's 9 months on from March. Lots of December babies.
Rebecca Reid, Calvin Robinson, Dawn Neeson, do stand by, because coming up, my superstar panel will nominate for today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But first, as Tory Party Chairman Oliver Dowden condemns the woke ideology infiltrating our schools, as social justice warriors threatening our children's future. GB News tonight, Darren Grimes investigates in The Outsider in just a few moments. First, though, here's what's coming up. Quick look in tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, as Prince Andrew reaches a shock settlement with his accuser Virginia Giuffre, will the Duke of York struggle to ever be considered innocent in the court of public opinion? The royal's ex-girlfriend and one of his biggest defenders, Lady Victoria Harvey, speaks out live. Plus, will Biden axe flagging Kamala Harris? American-born author and journalist Lionel Shriver weighs in on the White House's affirmative action dilemma. Plus, royal author Robert Jobson and GB News favourite Christine Hamilton give their takes on issues impacting Queen and country. And I break down the day's top talking points with my superstar panel. The Daily Mail columnist Amanda Platel, social media activist Adam Brooks, and the political commentator Daisy McAndrew. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Darren Grimes is tonight's Outsider. And the Conservative Party chairman yesterday condemned woke ideology by claiming it was emboldening enemies of the West. In a speech in Washington, D.C., Oliver Dowden said the social justice warriors' damaging self-criticism had infiltrated our schools and was sapping our nation's confidence.
Pernicious new ideology is sweeping our society. They claim to be woke, awakened to the so-called truths of our societies. They are engaged in a form of Maoism, determined to expunge large parts of our past in its entirety. A West confident in its values would not be obsessing over pronouns or indeed seeking to decolonize mathematics.
Well, clearly, Dowden was right that we should worry, because it's emerged that a National Education Union-funded training session actively encouraged teachers to move towards a gender-free language. According to the session's uber-woke advice, Mr. and Mrs. should be ditched in favour of teacher, boys and girls should be replaced by pupils, head boy becomes head pupil, and mother is replaced by parent. The training also suggested that the categories of male and female be removed from school application forms, and the box for gender should be left open. Darren Grimes, what are we doing in our schools?
I know. I must say, Dan, I agreed with Nadeem Zahawi earlier this week. He was in The Sun arguing that this kind of activist teaching has to be removed from our schools because ultimately, and I know you agree with this, kids should be able to make their own minds up on politics, Dan, and social issues in their own good time, right? It shouldn't be sort of spoon-fed to them in an attempt to fundamentally alter our society and the way in which we live our lives. And that's what I fear is going on here, ultimately. And I've got some gripes with the Conservative Party, but on this, they are absolutely spot on, I must say.
Darren, what I have an issue with is that we're changing language and we're trying to infiltrate this change in language from a very young age with our children for a tiny minority of the population. And by the way, if folk are non-binary, then fine, but I don't know why that should mean that we have to literally roll back hundreds of years of language that has developed around males and females. Of course there should be a head boy and a head girl. It's just nuts.
Exactly, it really, really is. And I mean, the whole point of school, I recently heard one anecdote from a school up here in the Northeast in which during one of these training seminar things, it was suggested that teachers shouldn't drink things like coffee in classrooms because the children can't drink coffee in classrooms. And just sort of start to think, well, hang on a minute. When did we lose all semblance of sanity in these areas? The idea of authority and discipline seems to have been stripped out of the curriculum, and children are no longer in schools to actually learn and be part of a lesson that's all about accepting authority and not being able to get everything you want in life. Because, Dan, I don't know about you, but I think saying to kids, suck it up, buttercup, life ain't easy, is a pretty important lesson. And all of these things, the training around male and female being removed from school application forms, Dan, you ask yourself, what are all boys' schools and all girls' schools supposed to do? And then at parents' evenings, being precluded from using the terms mother and father, how are you supposed to address them? And then don't even get me started, actually, by the way, on French lessons, because as you know, French is gendered language in extreme. It's a language rife with gendered terms. So
we're destroying our language.
Are they supposed to navigate a lesson like that?
We're destroying our language. I feel so sorry for teachers who walk into the classroom. What's the most natural thing to say? Come on over here, boys and girls. Today we're talking about this.
Yeah.
In their head, they're just going to be thinking, oh my God, I've made some huge mistake. No, you haven't. You've got a classroom of boys and girls. It's completely natural to refer to them as that. The other thing that really worried me about this, Darren, is they're saying that on school enrolment forms, you should no longer provide little boxes that say boy, girl, other. You should now just say gender. Now, that means if you follow ridiculous organisations like the University of Bristol, that young people will be able to say that they're a cat. Apparently that's official now. You can identify as a cat. You know, this is just ridiculous, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's cartoon. It is utterly cartoon. I mean, fundamentally, Dan, this is the mission creep of those who want wackery and wokery to stand in place of discipline and learning, right? This is the mission creep of those who want our kids to be thinking about sex and gender at a frankly, I think, despicable age to learn about such things. And this is the mission creep of those who are doing what they can to eradicate, as you said very eloquently just before, gendered language in pursuit of tearing up what has been accepted as societal roles and definitions for longer than any one of us has been on this planet. These arrogant narcissists who've come across and said, actually, I want to tear all of this up. I want to tell your children that this is the way in which they should approach these things now. And I think it has to be resisted at every given opportunity. But Dan, I will say this. The Tories have been in power now for over 10 years, and this culture is slowly but surely ebbing away at frankly, some really important things, and education must be one of the most important things in our country.
Come on, Oliver Dowden, come on, Nadeem Zahawi. Practice what you preach and stamp this out before it's too late. Couldn't agree more. Darren Grimes, tonight's Outsider. Thank you so much, Darren. We'll speak again next week. But time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. My superstar panel back with me. Dawn Neeson, who's your nominee tonight for today's Greatest Britain?
We've just been mentioning him. It's Nadeem Zahawi for...
Speak of the devil.
Absolutely. Education Secretary issue new guidelines reminding teachers to be politically impartial, not sway youngsters with politically correct woke things, and just, teach them lessons, educate them.
Absolutely. Calvin Robinson, your nominee.
Mine is Mislav Kolakusic, MEP, because he's the only European politician, as far as I can tell, to condemn the Canadian government for their tyrannical actions.
And Rebecca Reid, your nominee.
It's the Queen. I mean, it could be the Queen every week. But just recently, because of sort of complicated COVID exposures via Prince Charles and possibly Camilla, she's been working from home and rapping that it's perfectly possible to do a good job from home.
Oh, what a terrible reason to nominate the Queen. She doesn't want to be working from home.
There are no bad reasons to nominate the Queen.
She wants to be out there and about with her people. She hates working from home. Look, I'm going to go with Dawn. We've got to start standing up to this wokery, as Darren Grimes says. So Nadeem Zahawi, today's Greatest Britain. Union jackass time. Dawn, who's your nominee?
I'm going to go for the fat cat bosses who oversaw the post office IT scandal that saw 3,500 postmasters wrongly accused of taking money, and then 33 of those people
absolutely shocking case. No, terrible stuff. Calvin Robinson, your nominee.
Low-budget airline Ryanair, because they dumped on Novak Djokovic for making a personal choice. I called them out on it and they instigated a pile-on me. I think they should stick to their poor-quality, low-budget travel and keep out of politics. Leave that for the politicians and the commentators.
I just don't understand why they would alienate loads of customers. Basically, they've got to stop whichever woke person in London is doing their social media. Just leave the student politics at the door and let us make our own decisions about politics. Focus on providing a better service on your flights, I would say, Ryanair. Rebecca Reid, your nominee.
I mean, I've got to love anyone who sat as Calvin on the internet. My one, I would say Dawn is right. Anybody involved in the post office scandal is pure evil. But my one this week is Kanye West, because his his increasingly erratic behaviour and stalking of his ex-wife Kim Kardashian is being passed over because lots of people like him. But you can't behave like that to your ex-partner. It's not appropriate.
I see your point, but these are celebrities, and Kim Kardashian has turned her entire life into a reality show, and it's just giving her great fodder for the new TV programme, I imagine, Rebecca.
I mean, I can't wait to watch that.
My winner, Ryanair, though. Ryanair, come on, just stick to flying and leave the politics at the door. Great choice, Calvin Robinson. Thank you, too, to Dawn Neeson and Rebecca Reid, a fabulous superstar panel this Tuesday night. Remember, I'm back again tomorrow from 9 p.m. Headliners is next. Stick with them for all of the front pages. Good night.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Stormy conditions on the way through the rest of this week. We have an amber weather warning in place through Wednesday across parts of northern Britain because of Storm Dudley. Ahead of that, this evening, another area of low pressure will bring wet and increasingly windy conditions. But here comes Storm Dudley behind that through Wednesday afternoon and evening across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northern England. That's where the strongest winds are likely to be. But back to Tuesday evening, wet weather spreading across most areas, some snowfall over the hills across Scotland, staying pretty cold here as well. But elsewhere, temperature dropping this evening well down into single figures, but numbers by dawn, look at that, 9 in Hull, 11 in Cardiff, double digits across the south to start Wednesday. So it's not a cold start, and for much of the Midlands, eastern England, we'll see sunny spells through the morning, but it's going to be windy and